This presentation, Designing with Glass. So today we'll be discussing innovative glass solutions ranging from, environmental habitat focus to security and beyond. So hopefully you're game to see all that glass can do. And the learning objectives I'll just post on the screen for now. This, I think, we're in the promotional materials as well. And you're joined today by myself, Sarah Neiswanger, Director of Industry Engagement for the National Glass Association, and my colleague Katie Devlin, who's the Vice President of Content and Programming. So with that, let's get a little background first on the National Glass Association. And understanding what this trade association does. We are the only association serving the entire glass and glazing industry supply chain. So this starts with the primary glass manufacturers through the fabricators, the glazing contractors and installers, and then finally suppliers, distributors, and other partners. We have over 1,800 member companies in these categories. And then we also have an affiliate category for professions like architects, consultants, and educators. So we are hoping and intending to be your nonstop, one-stop shop for all things architectural glass related. So this is often how the world sees glass. This is also how NGA and the glass industry loves to see its building material of choice. Big, beautiful buildings, the reflection of sunsets and the clouds above, just unique, modern, and streamlined design. But this is also how NGA sees glass. Both residential and commercial glass is being asked to do so much more in our homes and buildings, and it is the only building envelope material that is capable of doing so, and so much more. So NGA advocates, promotes, and educates in all areas that influence glass and glazing. And so that means that in addition to promoting it, we're defending it and protecting glass when it comes to being selected as a building material. If it impacts or influences glass, NGA is involved, and these are an example of some of the stakeholders we interact with on a regular basis. Building codes, both at the hearings and by jurisdictions, standard setting, regulatory and certifying bodies, and other organizations in our building materials space. We coordinate often with groups like the Aluminum Extruders Council, the International Window Film Association, ANSI, and more. And then we do this coordination globally too. Our teams are heavily involved in the international standards setting organizations. We've been to Glass Performance Days. We are also an AIA registered provider, and we engage with AIA often, and most recently NOMA as well. You can find us at ASTM, the National Fenestration and Rating Council, and more. So we are trying to be involved to educate on glass and its use as broadly as possible.
Thanks, Sarah. So I'll be off camera, just cognizant of any bandwidth hiccups as we kind of dig into some of these trends. So that Venn diagram that Sarah showed, looking at all that glass can do, we'll return to that throughout this presentation while discussing sort of 5 key North American market drivers and trends, the glass products that are coming out to meet those trends, and also just how the glass industry is thinking about them in general. So we'll start out with protective glazing, and that's really our umbrella term for everything from hurricane impact systems to flood barrier systems, to fire-rated glazing systems, and intruder-resistant systems. We'll move on to habitat preservation and protection, the big focus there right now being on bird-friendly products, but because you all are AIA Florida, we definitely wanted to bring in turtle glass as well, since that's something that you are seeing in the codes down there. Moving on to energy efficiency, which ties in directly to daylighting and views, and then closing out with sustainability and circularity. So going to the next slide, what is driving this? Obviously, you see this across the built environment, but it's the code standard specifications, sort of that, the codes being the minimum performance standard for what a building needs to meet, and then the products that are looking to go beyond that. Regulatory environment, of course, impacts the buildings, the building trends, but most importantly, the design trends, what the design community, what the building owners, what occupants want from their spaces. And this is where we start to see that, multifunctional glass and glazing solutions that meet a range of demands like protective glazing products as well as decorative and aesthetics. Moving on to the next slide, we see just a chart that depicts, where these trends are according to the glass community. Glass Magazine is the National Glass Association's publication. Sarah showed some covers earlier in the presentation. And we run a top glass fabricators survey every year. This is just really taking the temperature of the market trends, the health of the industry, how busy folks are right now, based on uh, our glass fabricators. And they range, this most recent report in 2025 was an interview of about 60 companies ranging from a little less than 10 million in sales to upwards of 1 billion. So it's a pretty big swath of companies serving all parts of the glass industry. And according to those folks, what the top leading product trend right now is security glass impact systems, followed very closely by bird-friendly. And then, of course, a little bit further down, energy efficient glass, jumbo sizes, decorative glass, and then further into the interiors. So, the presentation today is really digging into some of those top trending products. So let's move on to our first trend, bringing back this Venn diagram. So protective glazing, where we're looking at it today, we pinpointed a few areas around this circle. And within the notes of this presentation, we have put links to a number of NGA technical resources on each of these topics. Sarah may be posting this in the chat if we're able to. It's this section in particular. We have a huge wealth of technical resources on everything from blast-resistant glazing, detention facility glazing, school security glazing, plus some more general, hurricane glazing, laminated glazing reference manuals. So if you want to really dig into the technical nature of what glass can do in all of these areas, please do take a look at these resources. Many of them are free. Just have to log into the site. So, architectural glass, it's beautiful, it's versatile, and it is multifunctional, and it saves lives. Glass in this protective glazing category, it provides safe egress for occupants in the event of fire. It protects people and interiors in the face of hurricanes. It can keep intruders out, provide ballistic and blast protection, and it also, keeps occupants safe in much more simple day-to-day ways. Glass floors have an anti-slip surface. Our railings, balustrades, all of those are designed to make sure people are safe. For today, we'll just focus on 3 categories within protective glazing. The first is hurricane impact. And on the next slide, we'll start to dig into this category. Again, I am sure you are all very fluent in the hurricane codes, but just a brief history to remind us of how this became such a trend for the glass and glazing community. It really all comes out of Hurricane Andrew that hit Florida in '92, causing an estimated $25 billion in damages. Just 2 years later, that's when we started to see some hurricane mitigation provisions in the codes. Florida Building Code, first edition, came out in 2002. The most recent version was released in 2023. That was the 8th edition. And when, I am sure you all are very familiar with the test standards and the types of products, but what we're doing on the glass and glazing side is creating systems that can meet these very stringent hurricane impact requirements. Here's a photo of an impact test that these systems must undergo. And it's not just the glass, it's also your framing materials, your sealants, your weather stripping, your hardware, even anchors. All of these things need to be able to withstand the forces of a hurricane. Um, Next slide. So, what does this actually look like, though, in practice? Because we've had these hurricane codes for many years now, decades now, and the glass and glazing industry has responded by looking to do more. Obviously, all of these products need to meet these very stringent impact test standards. Water resistant requirements within them, but we also want them to look beautiful. We don't want to be uh, bound by these requirements. It's really an opportunity to do more with these products. So that's what we start to see in architecture as the glass and glazing community has begun to push the envelope of what we can do with these products while meeting the hurricane impact requirements. So here's a photo of a new tower in Miami, residential tower. This won our Glass Magazine Awards for Best Protective Glazing. Um, a very a very cool project. The details are all plugged into the notes, so I won't dig in too much and geek out too much on the details. But we do have a tower with a curved geometry. No two floors are alike, so it just required incredible customized approach to the structure and the facade, all while keeping in mind these strict hurricane impact codes. Next slide. Here's another example just showing how these sort of, monumental, lobby curtain wall installations, these beautiful, vast expanses of glass are possible even while meeting the hurricane codes. This is a healthcare building in Pensacola, Best Protective Glazing Award in 2024. And the details of this project are also in the project notes. Next slide. This is just an example of the products themselves. This is an image of of the Slimpact Jumbo system. This comes from a company called Fauer Glass out in Tampa Bay. What Fauer has been looking to do with the Slimpact, and they're not alone. You see other companies trying to push the envelope in similar ways, but they're looking to do these large butt glazed expanses that still are able to meet the hurricane codes, and just sort of an example of what's possible. Something that we may not have thought was possible back in the 90s when these codes first started to take effect. Next slide. Uh, Here is sort of a related example. Obviously, flood barriers, flood zones are very relevant to hurricane-prone areas, but also any low-lying flood areas near rivers and things. And we're seeing just obviously around the country a need to consider flood barriers. What glass and glazing allows in these situations is to provide those views all throughout the year. And these systems are being tested to also hold back when the floodwaters come. So in the notes, for those who do want to look at the test methods that are involved in this, it is pretty impressive, the hydrostatic load testing of these units that are just capable of really holding back many feet of water in these flood events. Next slide. So moving on to fire rated, this is again another example of protective glazing doing more on a project. Fire rated glazing, it's not new to the building codes at all. I am sure you are all very familiar with where you sort of need these products in your hallways, just along these egress points in the facility. But what we are seeing now with design trends is, folks really, we want that daylight to permeate further into the building. And that means looking at these spaces that may have been a solid wall with a small window previously, we want those to be all glass, or we want them to be decorative glass, or we're really rethinking what we'd like these spaces to look like. How can we do more with them? Can they also be high performance? Do they also need to be security rated? Um, so looking at the next slide, we start to see what this can look like in action. I love this project. It's actually a few years old now, but it's an example of fire-rated glazing being used in a subway station. It's a fire-rated glass floor on the surface of Union Square. I think in this photo you can even see people kind of walking across it. But imagine if this was not glass, just the artificial lighting or just the overall dim feel. But you put glass in this space, and it just brings all of that light, that connection to the outside, down deep into this subway space. And to do it also with a decorative glass product adds even more to that, allows for some more aesthetic flexibility, bringing some beauty into it. And just one additional level of protective glazing, of course, this has to be, because it is a walking surface, it has to be a non-slip surface on the glass at top. So, it's a fire-rated system, decorative and non-slip. Next slide. More common example of how we're seeing a push to use fire-rated glass and glazing systems in spaces is for these interior walls, again, to allow daylight to come further into the building. This is a hospital project up in Washington. You see a multi-story fire-rated glass curtain wall that meets the building code requirements and allows for that light. And the next project we see is a similar example of this. It is in San Luis Obispo, the ACI Jet Center. Again, it's just putting glazed walls on the interior, which need to be fire rated to provide safe egress in event of fire, but allow for that openness and that beauty. On the next slide, I will just mention this very briefly. Data centers have been a huge project segment of growth across the US. And there is an interesting niche for fire-rated products in this, looking at the interiors, the systems, the protection that needs to be provided to those systems inside the space. So we have heard that this has been an interesting area of growth for fire-rated glazing. Moving on to our final segment of this protective glazing is school security. So this has been one of NGA's key legislative priorities for several years, just to with industry, calls from the industry. We've come together in fly-ins in DC to support federal legislation and funding appropriation for school safety and security. The glass and glazing industry has products that can protect schools in the event of intruder, security windows, security doors. The NGA, some of our volunteers our technical volunteers from industry really drove the development of a test standard for forced entry resistance for glazing systems in a simulated active shooter event. So, this is a big area where the industry is seeing a need, and we recognize that the products exist to make schools safer. On the next slide, you can see where the areas that we're talking about in a school. Nobody wants to take away the feeling of openness within a school environment, that connection to the outdoors that is just so important to students. But how can we protect those spaces in the event of an intruder? So, we're looking at the main entrances, exterior walls, any sort of windows that can go to classrooms. On the next slide, you see how this might come on the interior. How do we create this connection between the hallway space and the classrooms while also protecting occupants in the event of this? On the next slide, you can see just what this looks like in action. These are just a couple of examples of public schools that have chosen to harden their exteriors with some of these protective products. And in the speaker notes here, we have just really a wealth of resources about the test codes here and what NGA and our members are doing to support some of these changes through fly-ins. And really, the goal here is not, these are not bulletproof products. That's not what we're looking to do. We're looking to deter. So the average course of one of these events in an active shooter situation, it takes about 3 minutes for responders to arrive. So how can we harden these exteriors enough to just protect occupants with systems that readily exist? So with that, I'll close out the protective glazing section and let Sarah take over on our next theme.
Yes, thank you, Katie. So yeah, we're moving from protecting our occupants to now protecting habitats. And in this section, we're specifically going to touch on bird and turtle-friendly glazing, both of particular importance across much of Florida as well. So bird-friendly glazing was the #2 trending product according to the Glass Magazine Top Glass Fabricators report Katie had on screen a little bit earlier in the presentation. The use of bird-friendly glazing has been primarily legislation-driven and supported by the ability to earn LEED credits, fulfill building sustainability desires, and just its general versatility across project types. Again, we'll continue to reiterate, there is not just one type of glass that can be that can fill one need. Bird-friendly glazing can be obviously decorative, but it can be fire rated. It can be a variety of things based on the project's need. So in this case, why bird-friendly glazing and what are some of the risk factors that are created when using glass? So typically, glass, whether it's clear, tinted, or reflective, is essentially invisible to birds. It can create 3 effects as listed on screen with potentially lethal consequences. Those being reflection, transparency, and then the black hole effect, which we're also calling the passage effect. So glass can be deceptive to birds because it reflects the sky, the clouds, and the nearby habitat. And this is particularly the case with building elevations exposed to normal daylight conditions. Now, unlike humans, birds don't have the ability to differentiate whether what they're seeing is a reflection or not. On the next transparency piece, there are transparent conditions that birds will try to fly through to reach what is on the other side, whether that's a perch, water, or other plants. And then finally, birds often fly into small openings or spaces between leaves, branches, or nest cavities. And this passage effect can occur in certain high contrast lighting conditions, as you can see here. So it can be mistaken as a safe passage. And then the danger zones that we see in building, particularly with using glass. Plants, trees, bushes, and other types of vegetation, and as well as water, can attract birds and, relates to more collisions. Some studies using bird feeders demonstrated that collisions occur when birds take off from more than 3 feet away after they've gained some momentum. And a majority of the documented collisions occur from the ground level up to about 100 feet. And this correlates with many of the natural habitat elements like a mature tree canopy that birds are already perched in or flying from. The second picture, top middle, is an example of channeling. Channeling are landscape features that create a flight pathway along a corridor. So in this case, a sidewalk, for instance, is lined with trees and shrubs, but it creates a direct flight path channeling the birds toward the building. Glass corners, where glass lights meet at a 90-degree angle, very visibly creates what looks like a fly-through condition when birds aren't able to perceive the barrier. And then the lower photos, the levels adjacent to green roofs or rooftop gardens or terraces create a situation for birds. And then design features like alcoves or interior courtyards can actually end up being design traps for birds. It creates almost a mirror maze effect, and they have a trouble finding their way out. On screen shows a policy tracking sheet specifically for the US and Canadian bird-friendly building practices. This details by state or province the date, the status, whether it's voluntary or mandatory, and a summary of the policy itself. It can be challenging to keep track of these policies that are typically implemented, down to the city level even. So this has been a great help to generate, and it's been an NGA member only benefit for the last few years. But for all of you here today, we are providing a link to this tracker for 30-day free access so that you can take a look at what might be in your area or coming soon. So kind of in general, moving forward, demand for bird collision mitigation measures is really only increasing with the introduction of bird-safe glazing requirements. And so this is obviously fueling the glazing industry to continue to develop new technologies to meet the demand. We may see more areas where voluntary practices are swapped with mandatory standards. And NGA has a prescriptive guide. I'll put it or sorry, Katie, I think put it in the chat earlier, that a prescriptive guide that will eventually be integrated into ASTM and incorporated into a standard. And we will end the bird-friendly section with just another case study. This is Kresge College in Santa Cruz, California. It was the Glass Magazine Award winner for Best Specialty Glazing this year, and you can see the project team on screen. So this is a woodland campus project, and Skyline Design applied an etched pattern to the externally facing insulating glass units. And then Studio Game designed the custom pattern featuring native wildlife silhouettes and laid it in the 2x2 grid pattern, which we didn't cover today, but it is the American Bird Conservancy's considered best practice or recommendation for where birds can best perceive markings on the glass. So the unique pattern was applied to each prefabricated IGU. It's now proven to lower the material threat factor rating issued by the American Bird Conservancy, and it was able to achieve, a unique and decorative design that fit the area. So a win-win, both aesthetically and environmentally in that regard. And now moving on to turtle glass. I had a conversation last week even about did you know there was turtle glass? It can be one of those intriguing things, but for you all as Florida residents, I'm sure you are well informed on this already. But many coastal residents install turtle glass on oceanfront windows and other transparent surfaces that are facing nesting beaches. The glass is treated with a special greenish coating that is intended to protect the sea turtles and their habitats by limiting the reflective glare from the outside and the amount of light transmitted through the glass from the inside. We do have a technical paper on turtle glass, which I'll make sure to also paste in the chat. And I think there's just some kind of uncertainty out there with understanding what turtles can actually see, and also the struggle with what people also want to see out of their own windows. What is that best tint level? But Florida is the leader in the turtle glass business. And so we'll be interested to hear how that conversation continues to evolve. But as you're probably aware, in the US, all sea turtles are protected under the Endangered Species Act and the Marine Turtle Conservation Act. And Florida was the first in the nation to institute a Marine Turtle Protection Act. And the Florida Building Code mandates that oceanfront property use turtle glazing or dark gray tinted glass to keep this in mind. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Katie to talk about energy efficiency.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, and we did post those resources in the chat, so please, do take a look at those. So let's move on to energy efficiency. This was our number three product trend in the top 50 or the top glass fabricators report, though this has been a top focus of the glass and glazing industry for many decades. The energy codes are evolving toward higher efficiency products, and this is a trend that may intensify at state and local levels amid changes in federal policy. But for the NGA and for this industry, it's a nonpartisan goal. It's just the industry's commitment to overall sustainability. We can go on to the next slide. So this was the next couple of slides were provided by our energy code consultants who are really looking very closely at this on a day-to-day level. And what we're seeing, amid the new so our co-consultant, Tom Culp, he says that he's, constantly receiving questions and inquiries about how the new administration how that might affect where energy codes are going. And from his perspective, from what we've seen during Trump 1 and during previous administrations, it's from a high level perspective. We expect to see that, if the federal government steps out of pushing change in certain areas, often we start to see an increase in regional activity. So from an industry perspective, we're watching all of this. What we have seen in the last several years are jurisdictions like New York City or the state of Massachusetts, California, these spaces that are introducing their own more locally based jurisdictional codes. And our industry is eyeing those as, what we need to make sure that we can meet, and seeing what the rest of how the rest of the country is following suit. On the next slide, this is really just demonstrating, again, another slide from Tom Culp, our energy code consultant. But this is a historical look at what we've seen over the decades when it comes to our energy codes. And that's just an incremental increase in stringency. And this is what we expect to continue. This is sort of a slow moving freighter moving these energy codes forward. Next slide. And what is the glass industry's role in this? What is the built environment's role in this? These numbers, I'm sure, are familiar to everyone on the call, but according to Architecture 2030, buildings account for an estimated 40% of global carbon emissions. Building operations produce 27% of total emissions. And moving to the next slide, we start to see glass's role in this. This data comes from Glass for Europe, the trade association for the glass industry in Europe. And they, a few years ago, they put out a report just looking at the impact of moving to high performance systems. So imagine if we could replace all existing windows with readily available high performance glazing. So just kind of your standard, very familiar high performance systems, your insulating units with maybe a low E coating. If we replaced all windows by 2030, that would cut annual energy use by 29% and annual carbon emissions by 28%. If we could take that one step further and replace all of those windows with improved high performance glazing, by 2050, that would cut annual energy use and emissions both by 37%. On the next slide, we see what this might look like on a monetary basis. So this estimate comes from Steven Selkowitz. He's a many decades expert in the field of windows and window performance, worked for a long time leading the Windows division at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. And according to estimates that Steven Selkowitz has come up with, if we could magically retrofit all existing commercial windows with next-gen glass technologies like highly insulated dynamic glass, we move from a net drain of $20 billion in energy costs to a net gain of up to $15 billion in energy savings. So obviously, the glass industry has a critical role in improving energy efficiency of our of the built environment. And on the next slide, we look at, what these solutions include. So these are all very familiar to you all. Insulating glass, I think there have been insulating systems out for more than 100 years. The first system, I I think it was in the late 19th century, and it had actually a rope that was used as the spacer to separate the glass. So, this technology very high adoption rates, particularly in spaces where thermal performance is the focus. Low emissivity coatings, these also just skyrocketed in popularity during the 70s, that energy crisis, and now are incredibly ubiquitous on our buildings. Thermally broken frames, very, very common and increasingly high performing solutions to the framing system themselves. And then elements like warm edge spacers or gas fill. All of these are kind of our familiar suite of glass industry solutions for thermal and energy performance. The next slide shows the next level. So when we're thinking about kind of the next generation of performance products, and many of these also are not necessarily new, but they are beginning to gain steam as energy stringency increases. So we're looking at advanced IGUs, maybe, insulating glass units that have multi-cavities or multi-cavities with thin glass for your interior lights. Thin glass has become so common with LCD screens and things. So how might that come into our windows where we have an insulating unit that is the same width as a traditional IGU, but has, a thin glass pane inside for thermal performance. Vacuum insulating glass. That has been a big focus of the North American glass industry for the last few years, the last decade. Some big companies putting investment in this area, but it's not new. We've had VIGs for decades. This is a photo of a project, a residential project in China. And the VIG products continue to get larger. The safety performance has increased. It's beginning to meet the needs of the market. Building integrated photovoltaics, dynamic glass solutions, again, all ways that the glass industry is looking to take that next step when it comes to energy performance. Maybe not just reducing energy load or thermal load on a building, but also potentially producing energy for a building. On the next slide, we'll see just a case study of a couple of projects that demonstrate what this looks like in action. So here is a project in Norway with triple glazing, warm edge spacer, low emissivity coatings. And the next project is a university project that meets the Living Building Challenge certification. Here's where you look at sort of the holistic building design in effort to account for building performance, sustainability. So you have, the overhang and sunshade systems, products that are trying to tune the building to the various orientations, and then, of course, the high performance products themselves. And that really brings us nicely to the next category, which is daylighting and views. As we're, again, looking at this massive Venn diagram of what glass can do, I think daylighting and views is really going hand in hand with a lot of the energy and sustainability considerations. But the way that the NGA looks at daylighting is from obviously a building performance perspective, but also from a human perspective. And we have a number of resources that will be in the chat about the benefits of daylighting and views. And what we see in all studies that have come out in this arena is that occupants that are in spaces with access to natural daylighting, with access to views, have better health outcomes, better emotional health outcomes, physical health outcomes. They're more productive in office environments. They see reduced absenteeism and education. Their test scores are improved. We don't have these stats up here, but have been studies done about patients in hospitals. The healing rates are improved with patients when they have access to a window in their room. The next slide just offers a couple of additional statistics about daylighting in views in classrooms. So, from the NGA side, we're just really thinking about daylighting in views as essential to occupant health and comfort. But as we move to the next slide, you see it has to be balanced with the other considerations. So, daylighting and views are necessary. However, we also need to account for glare control because we won't have any of the benefits of daylighting and views if the sun comes in at such an angle in the afternoon that we're just closing our blinds and then we forget to open the blinds the next day. So then the blinds are just, down and we're not getting any of the daylighting or view benefits. And also we're not getting any potential energy efficiency benefits because the lights stay on, so it's all a balance of making sure that we uh, get maximize daylighting and views while minimizing glare and discomfort to the occupant, and also the solar heat gain side of it, making sure that you're not sitting in front of a window and boiling at 4 p.m. because the sun becomes so hot. So all of this has to be done with a sense of whole building performance for energy, but also for daylighting and thermal. On the next slide, we see just some of the product solutions that are looking to offer um, these kind of balancing factors for daylighting. So we've got exterior sun control devices. We have automated solutions on the exterior and on the interior. The photo there is of blinds that are within a unit that, or shades that can be, at the hit of a button, they can go up and down, or it can be automated within a building management system. Special glass coatings, spectrally selective coatings that filter out certain waves. And then, of course, just thermal performance within the glass units to help with that solar heat gain. Again, seeing a product like VIG being brought in for these purposes. Going forward, we just have a couple of examples of buildings that are looking to execute this balance. So here we have a facility in Pennsylvania that's using things like overhangs to manage glare, but obviously you have floor to ceiling windows there to maximize that light. Obviously, we're moving a step further here in terms of performance with the use of timber, high performance systems throughout, ventilation as well. The next slide, we see another example of this at a bank in Oklahoma. Again, you see the use of an overhang to take into account the glare, the visual comfort, the solar heat gain comfort, and again, a high performance curtain wall system, glaze system, as well as mass timber. And this project I wanted to include just because I think, the other two are quite ambitious, and this is just showing the use of tuning a building and trying to execute this balance between energy performance, thermal performance, and daylighting and views in a smaller space. So this is a elementary school in Louisiana. I posted the details of the project in the notes because it is a pretty exceptional story. There was a fire at the previous school, and kind of the whole project team came together to execute and build a new school for this community. But this building has been fully tuned with daylight and orientation in mind. So here we have our library, and that's the north orientation where they chose to do a full glass wall, so we don't have any direct sunlight coming in. So they really used that as an opportunity to have kind of floor to ceiling glass and bring in a decorative element as well. And then moving forward, I'll hand it back to Sarah to dig into our final category, which is sustainability.
Yes, thank you, Katie. Yeah, this section again is a nice wrap up from where we came from through all of this, and just remembering and appreciating that we're trying to be good stewards of our environment and in particular, our built environment and the products we're choosing. And that's the awesome thing about glass, is that it is infinitely recyclable and highly reusable. So we also want to continue to foster that approach when designing with glass. And so moving forward, I highly encourage you to review the resources coming into the chat. In particular, The advocacy one pager is an easy, short synopsis of the issue and the strategy. And it's a great method to create the case, with our stakeholders. So in this slide and the following couple, we're just going to address a few of the actionable steps NGA has been taking with some of its interested partners. So this past academic year, NGA was able to work with Purdue University's School of Environment and Ecological Engineering. So like companies like Microsoft and GM were able to sponsor groups of seniors as a client. And so NGA did the same and met weekly with their assigned students from August of 2024 until April of this year on a senior design project. And by the end of it, they had decided on architectural glass recycling as their point of study. And the team actually identified off the bat that there was just not enough data out there on architectural glass, and they would need to create a resource that would benefit those looking for exactly that. So they identified two primary obstacles to glass recycling, one being transportation inefficiencies and the other being material contamination. And in that case, that could be just other materials the glasses come in contact with during demolition. In some cases, we're still learning or working on how to recycle more complex makeups of glass as well. So they learned the benefits, challenges, and risks associated with the glass recycling, um, and decided that since the technological and environmental case for glass recycling had already been made, they would aim to make an economic case. So that is the point of their paper on the benefits of the economical benefits for glass recycling. Um, Another example, the Northwest Ohio Innovation Consortium, is a great way of showing how local initiatives can play key roles in circularity and how you can make an impact in your own city. This was a great educational promotion too on, what is cullet? Not very many people probably use the term cullet in their day-to-day conversations, but discussing what it is and how it makes glass infinitely recyclable. And we're also just in the frame of mind of reuse and recycling and making sure we extend that to the glass products we use in our everyday homes, whether those are jars of food to old glassware, all of it is worth and capable of being recycled. And then these are just two or three examples of companies that we have worked with in some fashion or another on a circularity project or with a circular economy focus. And the first one is Infinite Recycled Technologies. They are an NGA member, but they're one of several glass recyclers across the company or across the country, pardon me. But in this case, they had a case study written up on how laminated glass panels can be disassembled in order to be recycled. And also just a point of information, they did launch, I think about a year ago, one or two specifications that can be written into your architectural projects. So you can keep a lookout for that if factoring in recycling glass in any part is important to your projects. And then Dina is another company that's a construction consulting initiative that's focusing on reducing embodied carbon in construction. Um, the woman who started this company, Sophie Pelletier, also works for a large glazing contractor. So she's got two sides to her story, and both in the actual glazing installation side, and then understanding and appreciating the, the carbon and energy footprints of building and sharing information on that. In the chat, you should have the glass technical paper overcoming challenges of circularity in architectural glass recycling. And that is also supported by our World of Glass map. NGA's World of Glass map is not new, but what is new is the addition of glass recycling locations. And I actually had the privilege last week of attending the NOMA annual conference, which happened to be in Kansas City, and debuted the print version of this map. And it did receive great traction and interest. And the QR code on screen will take you to the digital version of it. So I encourage you to check that out. And this is just kind of a larger blown up version. So you can see even around your areas of the companies that elected to participate, float glass manufacturers, glass fabricators, and glass recycling facilities are all labeled, and you can click on the icons and get some more detail on those particular companies. And that kind of wraps up the educational component of this presentation. And we did just want to take an opportunity to give you another opportunity to meet with us and learn more about glass. NGA is coming to Orlando in early November, and specifically on November 4th, we will be hosting what we're calling Blueprint for Collaboration. And this is to illuminate the modern and artistic and functional uses of architectural glass and metals. You can earn up to 4.5 learning units during this day, which happens to be taking place during what we obviously consider the essential event for glass window and door community gatherings, Glass Build America trade show. So countless ideas and solutions will await you. We have a very large trade show floor where you can see glass fabricators, machinery. It is an open floor of glass exploration that we hope you will take advantage of. And you can register at glassbuild.com and use promo code AIAFL25 to waive the fees. So I'll put that in the chat. So hopefully you can come up to come up to Orlando to join us on the 4th. And with that, we thank you for your time and attention and for having us today. And we have a few questions that it looks like Katie or others have been addressing in the Q&A toolbar. Um, so let's begin. So one of the questions, just to recap, was how thick are the glass panels in the jumbo glazing system? And Katie shared in the company's materials, the thickness ranges from 1 to 2 inches depending on the overall design. So thank you for inquiring on that. The next question, what can you do so glass becomes bird glass? And Katie, I know that you're working on answering a question, and I think there are two solutions to that we can compare notes on. One is obviously to replace the glass with a fresh product, and the second would be to apply some kind of visual marker. It may be a film application of sorts to your existing glass in the ideally that 2x2 pattern that we discussed as being ideal for birds to see through. Katie, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I did want to give a hello to Heidi Trudell, who posted in the chat with another resource from Yale with some bird-friendly information there. But Heidi has been involved with the NGA Glass Conference and in this conversation for many years as an ornithological expert. So thank you for being here. And yeah, the answer is just to make that glass visible to the birds. I was at a trade show in Germany, the Glass Tech trade show last year, and saw some really interesting solutions, including one where there was a laser marker machine that could go onto already installed systems and begin to create a visual demarcation so that the birds could see the glass. But there are a lot of solutions out there, and I strongly recommend you look at those resources in the chat.
Mhm. And one other question, do we think that blast-resistant glass should be the first line of defense? Does it have to be a security fence or gates? This is obviously kind of a subjective question, but I think it's also just not not limiting it to one thing or another. We'll obviously advocate for glass to be factored into your school or general building security um, approach. It carries more benefits than just security, as we've been discussing through this presentation. Um, and uh, I guess, Katie, do you have anything else to add on that part?
No, I think that's spot on. Thanks, Sarah.
Let's see. I think a question comment here. We as architects typically deal with general contractors and glazing contractors and not the suppliers who actually prepares the technical submittals on A&E projects.
I would encourage you all in this conversation to get to know your glass and glazing suppliers as much as it makes sense on your projects. Come to Glass Build, see these folks face to face. I think there are companies that are very eager to work through design challenges with you on these projects, and they would like to get involved as soon as possible on the projects just to make sure you're getting the appropriate solution in the best spot on the building.
Yes, I'll second that. That's a conversation our members have frequently is being able to communicate earlier on in the design and specification process. So as you're looking at your partners, know that they would love to be included in that conversation early on.
There was a question, Sarah, about the promo code for glass builds,
Mm.
and I posted that. It's the Blueprint 25. Yes, posted that.
That one will work. We also have a special one for this group. So
Oh,
I'm going to
terrific.
post that in the chat too.
Great.
But you can't go wrong either.
I think there was another question. It appeared in the chat talking about recycling. What is the lifespan of an IGU panel?
Yeah, I think I will leave that answer to the insulating glass technical folks who do have some really great materials on that. And Sarah will have to. I know that we have a resource guide that offers some information here. But thinking about recycling of these products again at that glass build show, there are new machining technologies that are looking at how do you take an insulating glass unit maybe off of a building and recycle it? You know, how do you deconstruct it? There was a company that produced a machine that does, cut through that sealant, and then you can slice out the sealant part of the glass and then continue to use it. So that is something that the industry is looking at very closely.
Great.